It's that time again. Tyler, back in the car for another Requel pitch in the car. It's amazing the things you do that just lets your mind kind of wander and you just start thinking. But this time we're back in the categories of reboot/remakes. And remakes are usually my not go-to when talking about films and properties, because a lot of times, we're looking at franchises and it's like, what should they do with this? And every now and then we'll find a hard remake. And I think certain films lean itself to being able to be remade. The concepts are universal and it can be updated for a new generation. And I feel like a lot of times remakes don't really work. And I don't look at Batman 89 and Batman Begins, for example, as remakes. They're reboots. Because those are ongoing franchises that are existing outside of the films. Remakes are when you take something that exists maybe just from a book or a film and you're just redoing it. Well, like for example, Psycho. Psycho was a book that Alfred Hitchcock made into a film. And then years later, Gus Van Sant remade Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. Shot for shot. The most useless remake ever, because it didn't do anything to either pull from the source material and do something different that hadn't been done, or elevate or, recaptivate the source material to a new film. At the moment, I'm drawing on remakes that are actually good. And there's also readaptations. It's tricky when you're like, oh, we're going to remake this when it comes from a book, because I feel like every time you translate something from a book, much like at this time of this recording, the new Salem's Lot has dropped on Max. I have not watched it yet. That is a novel that was then made into a 2-part TV miniseries, then remade into a 2-part miniseries, and now into a movie. But each time it's from a novel, and that means it can change and adapt from the source material. But a true remake is taking something and doing it again. And today, we're talking about a Tom Hanks film from the 90s or late 80s, I'm drawing a blank at the moment, called The Burbs. The premise of this is about the idea of living in suburbia. It was always one I would catch on TV at my grandparents' house. And recently, Janine and I rewatched it. And it's funny. It works. It's not horror, but there's these elements. You have these different collection of neighbors. And they live on the block. And the way it's shot by Joe Dante is as if it's something more than what it is. And I think that's what adds to the charm of this movie. And I feel like this is something that could easily be remade into a modern day comedy and be something fun. Another remake I just thought of was What Women Wants, and then it was changed to What Men Wants or whatever. They gender swapped it. And it was a comedy that was remade not too long ago. And I remember watching it, and it worked. It was cool. It was fine, I have an ongoing category on Letterboxd called Movies That Should Be Remade, because I really think that there are movies that are made that there was a great idea here, but somewhere it got lost. And someone else could take that same great idea and make it something better. And The Burbs falls into that. We have our protagonist, Tom Hanks' character, who all we know is he's off work for some reason. They don't really give us a lot. And his family's there, and it's summer, and he doesn't know what to do with himself. And he's trying to relax, and they talk about going to the lake and vacation, but they have these new neighbors who move in, and the house is old, and the lawn is dead, and they're doing weird things, and the one guy, the paranoid neighbor, thinks they're a satanic cult. Then you have a retired guy with the hot trophy wife who's a little bit older, and then the young teenage kid who's hanging around with Corey Feldman. So there's this nice blend of suburban life. And is this touch of satire, and I feel like this is something we could revisit and be fun with. The idea that you have this overworked, uptight, protagonist character who, you open up, who's at work, who's in a meeting, who's doing everything, and then just kind of snaps under stress and is forced to take time off. Someone who doesn't like taking time off. Someone who is very much always wants to be busy, who is being forced to go home and relax and enjoy time. And you set it in the summer. So this character, he goes home and he's, he knows his neighbors, but he's always busy. So it's a very kind of, hey, how's it going? More than anything else. And he goes home and his family, his kids are home off for the summer. His wife is there. We could have the wife work if we wanted to or not. And then we see that maybe he's had these lists of chores and he starts I'm going to get into that. And then he starts realizing that's not really what he wants to do. Because now he's once again really busy. And the wife's like, you have these home projects. Let's not work on that. Do something that's more for you, not because things that have to get done. And so he's restless. He can't do anything. He's getting anything. Then, he starts connecting with the neighbor, who doesn't have anything going on, who's kind of the, what do you call it? I said earlier, like the conspiracy theorist. Let's make him a teacher. They're never really a job assigned in the original. So he's off for the summer. So he's got free time. And he's very lazy. And he starts the conspiracy theories and he's getting our protagonist caught up in things. And we see the people move into the house at the end of the street. And it's like on a cul-de-sac. So that makes it even more kind of like, this is our neighborhood. And they're a creepy, weird family that they're trying to figure out. And strange things occur. And you just have them starting to investigate. Now you have the older, retired military man with the trophy wife trope. You could throw that in there. The teenager that's home, that's parents work all the time. And they're out there maybe trying to do odd jobs for people, like cutting their grass. And we can really play around with like the home, like the HOA type things where people are overproducing their yards. They have a neighborhood watch they want to start. They're trying to get this new family in and they're not taking care of their house. The weird things that we have in our neighborhoods and in our homes and the secrets behind them, and playing around with all the different conspiracy theories that are going on. And definitely, like in the original, you have like the idea to throw these German almost Nazis that, definitely going to toss that out. I think it's more fun and more funny if it is just a paranoia sense where it's all kind of built up in their head. And you have our protagonist who's basically losing his mind. And in a way is almost harassing these people because he's buying into this paranoia and his own, stress and what stress can do to a person. And like how our neighborhoods work as little micro social environments, and we have our own rules and culture of our neighborhoods. And how that subversiveness of living in the suburbs is supposed to be quiet and peaceful, but without ever really losing the idea that this is a comedy and a little over the top. And that's I think what can be fun. We'll throw in some more neighbor characters around just for, like the really well-to-do older couple that's kind of in the first one where they think the neighbors killed him. There's a lot of tropes I think that are fun to play in just about neighborhoods. and what that means. And this is a guy who lives in a neighborhood but doesn't absorb the neighborhood because he's always working. And now he's kind of being thrust into the environment in which he lives. And it can get zany and crazy. Now, this is definitely one of those types of movies that I could see being made on a streamer, like an Amazon or a Netflix. And I say Amazon just because I know recently they've put out some higher quality this kind of comedies with John Cena, Ricky Stenicki, and Jackpot. So I just really see The Burbs kind of being this thing where it's a comedy, and it can even be set back in the 90s if you want to, or if you wanted to put it in today. We have these neighborhood apps that we use, like See Something, or what is the one where you can kind of create these cluster groups with your neighbors that, you know, report issues in the neighborhood or things you've observed. And that can be kind of fun to play with too, where social media and fake news and adds to his paranoia, and where they're, you know, almost rear windowing, watching these neighbors and the crazy things they're up to. And it's also about how we perceive people and how people are allowed to live the way they want to live. You know, like years ago, Janine and I looked at buying a house, and there was an HOA, and it had all these rules and standards, and I was like, you know, I understand these in the sense that they want to make sure that people aren't living trashy and broken homes and messed up yards because you have property value and stuff like that. But at the same time, if I can't get to mowing my grass right away because I have other things going on, I don't need someone showing up and giving me a fine because my grass isn't cut. Or, you know, I'm not watering my lawn, or they say the outside of my house isn't pretty enough because I don't have enough plants or something. Or I can't put a shed in my backyard or build a fence without, you know, paying for fees and approvals and, you know, having to go through a gauntlet of things. So there could be something where the neighborhood wants to start a HOA and people are pushing back and some aren't. And, you know, there's this idea, well, this house has been a detriment in dropping our property value, and, you know, I want to flip this house. And you could have people trying to bid it, but then somehow these people bought this house and they're moving in, and it looks like it's a reject from the Addams Family house. A little subplot there or something, you know, all this mystery about who these people are, and the idea of paranoia that we can take and just run with it, and how far we can go. It's prime there, because also, I mean, the one thing I want to hit on is, you know, we live in an area where we have neighbors, and we get outside and we meet our neighbors, but we're not really close with a lot of our neighbors. I mean, growing up, I knew my neighbors, my parents did, and, you know, kids were outside and there was more events, and I feel like people live around each other, don't even really know each other. You know, my neighbor, I see them outside, and the other day I had to knock on their door because we had a power outage, and I was trying to figure out who all it affected. And it was kind of awkward, you know, like going up to my neighbor's door, almost like this is something that shouldn't happen. And the neighbor on the other side, in the summer, he had a garden. He grew a bunch of squash and cucumbers, and he left some on our doorstep. We had no idea who it was from. And then one day he asked us if we got it, and we were like, yeah, man, we appreciate it. But neighbors are strangers to each other. And I think that plays into the whole premise of this movie. You know, used to, your neighborhood was your community, and you knew your neighbors. And this is kind of asking the question, what if you don't know your neighbors? Or how well do you know your neighbors? What is your neighborhood? Is it an isolated house with other people? I mean, the biggest thing that brings out people in our neighborhood is Halloween, because everybody's out trick-or-treating, people are passing out candy and they're interacting, and when we have our community yard sales twice a year. what happened to the American neighborhood? Where is it today? What does it look like? You know, it's such a cultural thing of these, you know, cute suburban house, and you can play on some tropes with one of the neighbors being like almost that quintessential past ideal of what American, you know, home looked like. White picket fence, husband off to work in a suit, wife at home. And like I said, you could have our protagonist's wife be at home, or she works from home and maybe she's more of a creative type. So even though she is home from working, she doesn't have the time to really focus on her husband because she's working and doing her own thing. Maybe she has her own like small business or something, graphic artist or something like that. You know, giving her something to do and being in the picture, but yet at the same time not being tied to what the husband is doing. So it gives him this freedom of, you know, exploring and getting caught up with shenanigans with the teacher neighbor. But if you haven't seen The Burbs, check it out. It was streaming on Prime, I believe. It's just this fun little Tom Hanks movie that I think is forgotten, and like I said, it has a charm to it. It's a weird, awkward movie in the sense of like, what is this? But there's a charm to it, and I feel like you could really kind of make something fun with it now.